just get them off.
How much would it generally cost if you had to pay for yourself?
It's 50,000 New Zealand.
Sheesh.
So I thought I wouldn't be able to get the surgery because I didn't think of China as a place like that.
Better known as a popular tourist destination, Hangzhou is fast becoming popular for something else: cosmetic surgery. I recently made a trip to Hangzhou to support a friend who went under the knife here in China. And today she's here to share the juicy details on what to expect if you're looking for surgery in China as well. Before I introduce her, this is a slightly different YouTube video to the ones that I normally put up. If you want to learn more about life in China or expat life, then make sure you hit like and subscribe. So kia ora, Kat.
Kia ora, Nick.
Before we get into the juicy details, could you please introduce yourself?
I am Katrina. I am from Wellington, New Zealand, and used to be a nurse, but now followed my husband to China and am doing my professional doctorate.
We're in China now. We both live in China. That's how I met Kat, the only two Kiwi families that live at the school. So first things first, everyone is interested. What kind of surgery did you get?
Breast reduction.
And when did you start thinking about getting that surgery?
I was 25.
What is the usual process for getting this kind of surgery in New Zealand?
You need to go through your GP and get referrals and have really high need for why you need the surgery. But even then, it's not a simple, straightforward thing, and it costs a lot of money.
What would one of those high needs be?
The back pain, the shoulder pain, the trouble sleeping, the impact on your daily life. And obviously there's people more severe than me, but even though I had most of those things, I would never have met the criteria of actually getting it done.
Okay, and so who's making the decision?
To be fair, the GP, you can pay to go see a breast surgeon yourself, but you wait a very long time to get in.
How much would it generally cost if you had to pay for yourself?
So I had been looking at it for a long time and estimates ranged, but mostly it was $50,000.
Sheesh. What's included in that?
That is the surgery itself. It would have been one night, no post-op care, so none of the dressing changes, none of the follow-up appointments, none of the stitches coming out.
Share from your knowledge what it's generally like for women who are seeking breast reduction surgery in New Zealand.
You have to have a supportive GP, which I was lucky that I did, because they need to be able to hear that it hurts. It really hurts. You've got a sore back, you've got sore arms at the end of the day, sore shoulders. In the night, when you lay down on your back, it's really hard to breathe. But then also, if you are planning to have children, then sometimes that can re-stretch your skin, so then you're discouraged from doing it before you've had your children as well. There's lots of roadblocks that people can find for you to get the surgery, because it is considered cosmetic, about looks only, which it really isn't, but that's how it gets kind of pitched.
Working in the health sector yourself and having to put up with that, how did that feel?
Endless frustration.
I bet.
The flip side of that, though, is that I do understand how stretched the system is. And I can see why, when you've got people waiting for endometriosis surgeries, or they're waiting for their new hip, or, you know, they're waiting for what we do pay for in the elective health system, and they still wait years, and they're just as debilitating, if not more, issues. I understand why it falls off the radar and why it's not funded, but I don't understand why it gets discredited as not necessary.
Yeah. Fair. So do you think it's something that's achievable in New Zealand?
100% no. Even if you had all the means in the world, and by that I mean the income, getting a surgeon who has time is not only a money issue.
What made you think about getting surgery in China?
So when Richard was at the international fair looking for jobs, it suddenly popped into my head, if we went to a country that does surgery cheaper, like Thailand or Malaysia or something like that, I might be able to get the surgery. So then I became much more keen that we were going to move for 2 years because I might get my surgery. It boiled down to which place was the best for the family, and it turned out to be China. So I thought I wouldn't be able to get the surgery because I didn't think of China as a place like that. But again, it was like, I'll go to South Korea because it's not that far, and I was looking into flights between China and Korea and how easy would that be, and then looking into the costs in Korea, and just assumed that that would be the way to do it. It didn't think you came here for cosmetic surgery.
I have to say, like, before you were like, I'm going to get my breast reduced, I didn't think China was big on cosmetic surgery either, but we've since been proved wrong. What was the cost for that?
To have a breast reduction surgery in China, including going to Hangzhou in the south of China from Beijing, including all the post-op care that we paid for ourselves, the accommodation down there and the food with yourself down there, I paid 14,000 New Zealand dollars.
Wow. I didn't realise it was that
cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was everything. Everything was 14,000, and that was what I had. And when I was talking to the translator who helped to book it, she said to me, "What do you have?" I said, "I have this," and made it happen.
So how much would it have cost, do you think, if the translator had made that work for you?
It was coming up around 16,000 New Zealand dollars.
Right.
2 nights in hospital were paid for inside the package, including 1 night in another hotel after I left the hospital.
Yeah.
That was all included in the package, and then I added an extra night at the end
Right.
for getting on the train to come home.
Okay.
So I paid 2 nights and the hospital paid 3.
Yeah.
The translator is really helpful because she bargains it down, but she bargained it down so much that even when I booked the travel and I added a little bit of accommodation on and the food, it was still within the 14.
Sheesh.
That's her weight in gold, that girl.
That's pretty good, isn't it?
When I was researching it, I kept thinking if I pay 20,000 New Zealand dollars to get this done, it's still a win.
Yeah, because it's less than half price at home.
Yeah, you can get it done twice. Make them perky again.
Exactly. When you went into surgery, could you talk to us a little bit about that? If you've watched my other videos, you'll see that I ended up in Hangzhou quite late after it was all done and dusted.
So I went down the night before. I got there, I think, like 6 or 7 in the evening. The translator met me at the airport, took me to my hotel, and it was good to kind of see her face to face before like the big day.
Yeah.
The next morning, the translator and the hospital manager and the theatre manager turned up to pick me up. We went from my hotel directly to just a general Chinese hospital, and they managed to get breast ultrasound, blood tests, a chest x-ray, ECG within an hour at that place.
Sheesh.
And then back into the fancy DD to the main hospital. Then met the surgeon there. They were really worried about the scar size because I was so big asking to go so small, and scarring in China's not as socially acceptable as it is for New Zealanders. And so there was a lot of discussion about the size of the scar that I would end up with. And it did take quite a bit of effort on the translator's part to explain that I didn't care. I just wanted to go as small as possible.
Yeah.
So we had a discussion around that, and then I had time for a nap, and then we went into theatre.
Wow. Because I do remember coming to talk when I came to see you, and you said to me that you had initially met with one surgeon and then you actually ended up with another surgeon.
That's right. I forgot that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 2 weeks before I went down, I had a WeChat discussion online with the translator and the surgeon, our surgeon. And on that, you did have to take your bra off and like wave your boobs in front of the camera, which was slightly awkward. No, not today. Done now. And so then when I turned up in Hangzhou on the Sunday night, the surgery being on the Monday, the translator did say to me, "We've moved you to a different hospital. So there's a collective of cosmetic surgeons." And I had come up in their monthly discussion because if they've got a case that's going to be difficult or whatever, they'll have a chat and talk amongst themselves, which I know happens in New Zealand as well. It's actually quite a normal thing to happen, so thankfully I wasn't bothered. And it just happened that the surgeon that I had met hadn't realised just how big my chest was. And so he had talked to this other surgeon to be like, "Oh, you know, she's asking to go really small from really big. I'm not sure that's in my range at the moment. I would rather keep..." Because I was asking to go from a G cup to a C cup. They were sort of saying, "Oh, we could get you to D, maybe, like a bigger D." And I just kept saying, "No, like, really need just, like, even if it's a full mastectomy, just get them off." Yeah. And so they thankfully took that on board. And then this other surgeon was like, "Well, I think I might be able to do it." But then face to face on the day, on the Monday, again, when I got my chest out, everyone in the room went, "Oh." And the translator was like, oh, it's even bigger in real life than it was on the screen. And I was just like, I know I've missed a real calling here, but
I wonder how
get
many
them
times
off.
she's had to see, titty, like big titties.
Not much, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
Like, yeah. There was no poker face in the room. They did that very Chinese thing. Like, and I'm standing here like, is it, okay.
The girls are out.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's cold in here, guys. Like, so even he then at that point was like, the scar's going to be so big. Like, I don't think a C is possible. I really was like, just do what you've got to do. The scars, I don't care. So then there was discussion about, there might be drains in afterwards and things like that because the wound inside was going to be so big. But he did it. He did a great job.
For people who aren't familiar with, surgical terms and stuff, first of all, did they put drains in?
No.
Okay, so you saved yourself.
I did.
There.
Yeah.
If they had have put drains in, could you explain what that might have entailed?
It's when they sew in a tube into the wound to drain out the fluid that the body's going to make when it's trying to shut itself up. So, but from a big hole to a small hole. And instead of the fluid collecting inside the tissue, they leave that tube in and it literally just drains out.
Were you expecting that?
It was. The surgeon was quite concerned that he wouldn't be able to close up such a massive hole.
Yeah. There's a translator.
Yeah.
And she met you obviously met her online. Yeah. Can you talk to us about how did she come into the picture?
So she is part of a medical group. She has her own company. And she runs the booking for cosmetic surgeries. So you can get any surgery through her, actually. So she was the one that was liaising with the surgeons, the hospital, the managers that were kind of everywhere, making sure that I knew how to pay, who to pay, what to pay, and that it would all add up to what I had.
So if you are interested at all, then I will make sure to include her details in the description below. We can basically go from there. Or just leave a comment or get in touch with one of us and we'll happily put you in contact with her. I remember meeting her too because
she came and visited me every day in hospital and at the hotel. Having her there was really helpful. But she had lived in America for a period of time too. She would switch almost cultures as well as language. And so when she would talk to me, it was a bit more softly than you sometimes get from other people. When we go to the local hospital and sometimes they're just like, why? She was very like, the doctor says. And I'm looking at this guy thinking, don't think that's quite how he said it, but that's fine. I appreciate the attempt, So she was very comforting. And like when IE was real mad at me and she just said, oh, IE doesn't feel like she needs to be here. Whereas IE was like, rah! IE is auntie.
IEs in China are very common that they're everywhere. You can hire them to come and cook and clean for you. You can hire them to come and look after your children. And they will give you personal care.
What I didn't realise in hospital, because working as a nurse in New Zealand, you help people eat, you help people shower, you help people get their stitches out, you help people in the full range of bodily functions that need to happen, as well as running a ventilator and all the rest of it. And not in China. The nurses would come and put an IV line in to give the antibiotics, and then I'd never see them again. But the IE was very happy to order the food, to help me get changed. So she would do all those things, and every time you sort of rolled over in the bed, she'd jump up and come over to help. As a New Zealander, that wasn't exactly what I expected. I didn't realise the hospital doesn't have food. It was asking me, where's your food? And ordered me some more healthy things, and then tried to spoon feed me, at which point I was like, no. So between us, we were very unsure what the other one was really wanting, and she was trying so hard to be helpful. And the next morning that translator came in and the IE instantly leapt on her, and it was very obvious that there was complaints about my behaviour that were not fully translated.
That we understand now is very normal. It's a very normal part of the surgery procedure, right? And she's part of the package?
Would not go to hospital without IE. And if you don't arrange it yourself, then the hospital were going to make sure it's happened.
It's funny because when I first turned up and I was like, who's this lady sitting in your bedroom, like in your,
That's how I felt too.
in your room?
All things that nurses would do in New Zealand, but
She was
she
doing it.
just automatically started to do it.
She was lovely.
Like, she knew what was needed to be done. I didn't have to say, can you do this, can you do that? In fact, it was very much like, I can do this. When it came to like eating or something, she wanted to even help with that.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
she was lovely, and she had not a word of English, and I had very little Chinese, still do, but even less back then. And so she was trying to use a translator, but also sometimes you don't need that because there's just a way people say stuff and you're like, oh,
Don't do that.
sorry. My bad.
I stayed with you for that first night. Had you still needed her, she would have stayed the second night as well, and then most of the day.
She was
right?
booked for the second night, which is why when the translator was saying that I was very hard to look after, I didn't want to just openly be like, well, then she can go, because I didn't know whether she was
Being paid
needing the
or-
money
yeah.
or if she left she wouldn't get the money or whatever, because I knew she was booked for 2 nights. But in the end, the translator understood that and she said, no, it's fine. She's happy to go.
It's probably like, thank
Yeah.
God.
It's a bit like she sort of scooped her things up and left and was like, thank you. So I did actually love you.
You're very nice.
It was so sweet.
Just a little bit too attentive.
Yeah. I can wipe my own drool. She tried to blow my nose at one stage.
I don't think you told me that.
She
But...
was so lovely.
Oh man. And then the translator just to go back to the translator, because she was also lovely, but I do remember there was one point there she was vaping in the room
She was
when I walked
vaping in the hospital room, yeah. On day 0
They
of
were
the surgery.
They were smoking downstairs. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. And then they were surprised when we were like, I have a vague memory of you coming in. I was like, it's fruity.
You did. You were like, it smells like fruit. I was like, what smells like fruit? Then I looked at her and I was like,
So what is she like? The lady's vaping. The lady's vaping.
I was like,
How
what
do
the
you do
hell?
this? Yeah. But then, she was sitting there vaping and I was very uncomfortable. I didn't know how to say.
Stop vaping in my room. I've just had surgery. Talking about vaping and smoking, we went from there to the hotel, which also had smoking.
Yeah. The no smoking sign above the ashtray.
That's right.
What got me. Although we've been to more hotels now and it's everywhere.
It is.
Yeah.
It is everywhere. So, yeah, in hospital, they will also smoke there too. And I guess if you were a smoker, you could have smoked
Yeah,
as
it
well.
would have felt fine. Not like New Zealand where you get the
What the hell?
withdrawals.
They slap you with a pat.
Yeah. Literally.
There are some other things I want to talk about as well, because one of the things I think that surprised me when I came to visit you was what the hospital looked like. Now, did you get surgery there?
Yes.
Okay.
Literally across the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it didn't look anything like a New Zealand hospital.
No. You walk in and there's chandeliers and like beautiful leather couches and gorgeous tiled floors and
And gigantic posters of the surgeons, right?
Yes.
And
then their work.
Yeah.
Which I'm really hopeful I'm not on one of them. I don't think I will be because those girls were looking lovely. I was not. Yeah, it was like out of a magazine. And then we went up to level 1 and it was very...
Felt like sitting back in time.
Yeah, very 70s hospital. Yeah. The colour scheme was old school, like it was all peach walls. Yeah. The bathroom was very old, but thankfully it was a Western toilet because it could have been otherwise. And it was just very sparse. But then I think I was one of the longest stays there at 2 nights.
Okay.
Because when I was trying to do my daily walk around the unit, there were women there were getting a lot of facial surgeries, and they were like obviously day cases because they were sitting in a slightly different section. But the bed was a very Chinese bed, like the mattress was like that thick, and it was just solid. Oh yeah, and it wasn't electric, like the IE would pump it up to sit up and things. So it wasn't fancy, but it was clean.
Yeah.
And that would have been my main thing that upset me. If it hadn't been clean, I would have got worried.
Thanks for watching the first half of our video. Our chat is quite long, so I've had to cut it into 2 videos to upload it to YouTube. Our second video is up already. You can find it right here. It talks more in detail about the surgery that Kat had. If you have any questions for Kat, myself, or even the translator, feel free to leave them in the comments. Otherwise, we'll see you in the next video.